We're going to get started. Those of you who know me know that I usually have very interactive sessions. So I have a little anxiety about this being a webinar. We had over 100 people sign up. So it's going to be a little different if you've worked with me before than what you're used to. So here at Mount Holyoke, we really believe that everyone has a math story, and we want you to be the reason your students have a good one. So thank you for registering for today. We have 2 more coming up in November. If these are an interest of you, please grab this QR code and register. Also, we're having an after party today. If you're interested in learning about our Masters of Arts in Teaching Mathematics program at Mount Holyoke, which can be done fully online, so you don't need to be in Massachusetts, please hang out with us for an extra half hour after this. So I'm Marria Carrington, and I'm the Director of Math Leadership Programs here at Mount Holyoke College, which is in South Hadley, Massachusetts, for those of you who are not from New England. This is my first live webinar as director, and I have 30 minutes and I have a lot to share. So my goal is to provide some ideas and an experience here that will cause reflection and opportunities for you to be a learner and to think about how to improve your practice. Please put all questions in chat. My awesome assistant director, Naomi, we're going to save the chat, and I won't be responding to the questions in the chat today because I have so much planned, but we will send a follow-up document with the questions and the answers if we have them. Also, as I said before, this will be a webinar, not an interactive session, so please stay muted. We will be watching some videos, so I encourage you to take notes on those for your own learning. So let's jump right into our early numeracy session. So what do we mean by early numeracy fluency? Today, we're going to touch briefly on each of these aspects of early numeracy. I could do more than 30 minutes on each topic easily. In fact, we've got a 2-credit course starting at the end of January if you're interested in digging in deeper with me on these topics. Also, at the end of today, we'll have a feedback form, and I'm considering taking each topic and doing just 30 minutes on that topic. So you're going to get a taste of each today. And if you want to come back to dig in more, please let me know via that form that you'll see at the end. Let's get started and think about this first one, verbal sequences. This is Beckham, and he's going to be with us today on about 4 videos. He's going to paint the picture for us as we consider these 4 topics. Let's meet him now. How old are you now?
A half and a full.
So this was June before he entered kindergarten. And when he said that to me, it just warmed my heart. And I can see Kim on my window, and she had a nice little smile there. So when we think about number, there are really 3 critical features. Each number has a symbol that kids need to be able to identify. There's a verbal word for each number, like 3, and they all have quantity. And students develop differently across these 3 features. So today, we're going to follow Beckham and see what he knows about each and consider ideas to help him move forward. And hopefully you'll see in him some students that you may be working with. Also, he really paints a picture of the depth of knowledge a student coming into kindergarten may actually have. And let's consider reading for a moment. Words also have these features. They have the symbolic. For tree, it's T-R-E-E. They have to put those 4 symbols together, or 3 symbols together. You have to be able to say the word, and you actually have to know what it means. And in math, we need to make sure we are connecting the symbolic and verbal to that meaning, to the quantity as much as possible in all levels, not just early numeracy. So the first one we're going to think about is this verbal sequence. So we're going to watch a 1-minute clip. And as you're watching it, please consider, what does he know and have in place? What might you be able to build on? And also think about, what are some of these tricky numbers in our system? If you've taught pre-K, kindergarten, 1st grade, it's probably going to be a little bit of a review for you. If you're a math coach that hasn't taught in those grades, hopefully this will open your eyes to some of the challenges that teachers are facing when they're trying to bring this knowledge, help students develop this knowledge. Can you count for me and I'll tell you when to stop?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 19, 20, 16, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 60, 61, 62, 64, 65, 67, 68, 69, 60, 10.
Thank you so much. You know a lot of numbers. Do you like counting?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, just take a moment to gather your thoughts about what he knows and what you can build on, and where is he getting tripped up with those tricky numbers. Hopefully you heard that he got to 12 just fine and then skipped 13 and said 14. And that's often a moment where kids struggle because of just the words, the language of 13 and 14 and the development of their speech. And then he jumped around the teens a bit, which is also a really tricky area. And then he really had that nice pattern down from 21 to 29 and then jumped to 60. And when we're thinking about this sequence, it's a lot of vocabulary development. There are 28 words that kids need to learn within 100, 1 to 20, and then those decade numbers. So you might be thinking, wow, it's 100 words. It's really not. It's 28. So it's doable. He already has a lot of them, and he hasn't even started formal schooling yet. Unfortunately, we are up against the challenge of the English language, as it does not support quantitative understanding with the language we use. So for example, whatever genius, chose to make up the word 11, I would challenge that was not a good choice. 11, 12, 13, 15, these don't help our young learners. They don't make sense. They don't follow a pattern. So we have a challenge there. And these are some of the first numbers we're trying to get them to learn. So I'm sure you noticed, needs a little more practice within the teens, and it starts to get that pattern once it gets to 20. If you didn't know, many other languages, some Asian languages, are a step ahead of us in this area, because when they get to 11, they reuse the word for 10 and 1. So 11 becomes 1 and 10, or 10 and 1. So the quantity is actually built into the vocabulary. 20 is 2 tens. So they don't have to learn as many words, and their words actually make sense and are connected to the quantity. We don't have that. So we need a lot of repeated practice and modeling here, and also really direct instruction around this vocabulary. Think about those good literacy practices for developing vocabulary, and use that with the math words. In fact, I would challenge you, if you're a kindergarten teacher, do the math words as part of your literacy block and save more time for some of the quantitative understanding we're trying to build in kindergarten. Let's also talk about the backward number word sequence. It's not in many of our state standards, but it should be developed as soon as kids are fluent with the sequence going forward. So Beckham's got 1 to 12. We want to start making sure he can go from 12 and back down to 1. You want to work on building this as simultaneously as possible. And really, a strong backward sequence is critical for subtraction to support students when they're ready to move away from a count all strategy or a direct modeling strategy. Here are some activities to consider when you're thinking about helping develop the verbal sequences. The first activity is actually find out what your kids already know. So we can really amplify all of their experiences, so they're working on things they need to learn. If they've got something solid, let's not have them keep practicing that. We're going to send more ideas in our follow-up PDF, but here I want to highlight a few on here. The standard in kindergarten is to count forward from any number within 100. In order for that to happen, we have to do that, and we have to practice the number word after. So if you ask a student what comes after 42, we want to help them be able to say 43 without having to have a running count. It takes practice. It can be done. And with the creativity that our kindergarten and pre-kindergarten teachers have, we want to think about, how can we put these things in context? So kids are really excited about their age usually. So getting them to get that idea that the number after is how old you're going to be on your next birthday is one way to bring that into context. Number word before it comes into play when you're working on that backward sequence. And I would say within 20, being able to really be good on those numbers before within 20 is a great goal for kindergarten, although it's not in the standards. But addition, subtraction, when you get to first grade, is happening a lot within 20. So we want them to have fluidity with that backward count within 20 as well. So thinking about this 30 minutes, I had a lot of different directions to go, and I just want to be transparent. You're going to get a little bit on each of these topics. And hopefully you'll find something you can walk away with. And if you're interested in digging in more, let us know in the exit slip. And we could really do at least a half hour just on fleshing out more of these activities and whatnot. So please give us that feedback. We're going to jump to identifying numerals. And again, let's consider what he has in place. And also keep in mind that the symbolic work should come a little bit after the verbal has started to develop. Just like kids sing that alphabet song before they can identify all the letters or the sounds, we want to build this verbal sequencing before we're like bringing in the numerals. So that's a base that they have. Let's see what he can do in this 1 minute clip. You know what that number is?
3.
All right. How about this one?
6.
How about that one?
5. 4. 2. 1. 8. 10. 9. 7.
You want to count those for me?
6. 7. 8. 4. 2. 9. 5. 1. 3. 8. 10.
Thank you so much for your hard work today. That was actually the end of my interview with him. And you're going to see his work in the counting and early structuring. And I was blown away, mostly by his ability to read those numerals as they're down there now. Most kids, if they don't have the order correct, their verbal kicks in and they're like 1, 2, 3, and they don't notice that the symbols aren't connecting. He was able to still say each numeral even though it wasn't the right sequence. So it was an interesting example, and I hadn't seen anything like that before. So he knows a lot. He can ID all of those numbers to 10. And he needs to work on connecting that with his verbal sequence that he has. So he's an interesting example. And those two tasks, just identifying numbers in isolation and asking them to put in order, you can do with any range of numbers that you're working on. Also, if a child can't identify the numerals, you want to take a step back and try a numeral recognition task. And the difference there is you'd have the numbers out or the numerals out, and you would say, which one is 4? Which one is 7? And Beckham would just have to point. So it's a simpler task as a student doesn't have to produce the word, but it gives you great information as to a student who can identify like he can, a student who can recognize, and then a student who maybe doesn't have any of the recognition or identifications, because you want to know what your kids have in place so you can get your instruction in line with that. So you want to push each of them forward. So some instruction activities to consider around the symbolic, and the symbolic naturally is combined with the verbal because they're saying the word, right? So think about number paths, numerals, numeral tracks. And I also have 5 and 10 frames on here too. And you may ask why. That's quantity. That's not the symbolic. Well, we want as much as we can to link the symbolic understanding to the quantity, especially within 5, 10, and 20. So here are a few instructional ideas. Those are some tools. And I'm going to show you a picture of the numerals and numeral tracks. And again, the follow-up PDF will have more information for you to refer back to. So Treasure Hunt is a game. And in our PDF, there's a few videos that show you how to play it with kids. It's from the U.S. Math Recovery Council, and it's on their blog. We'll have that link for you as well. And it's very easily differentiated, and students love it. I know there's people in this room that have done this game. So if you want to put something in chat about like your favorite treasure hunt sequence, please do. But students are looking for treasures as they sequence the cards. And you can make your own cards like this example shows. They're working on the team numbers here. Or you can, purchase, there's some already made cards and treasures through the U.S. Math Recovery Council, but my students have loved just the homemade treasures, a little heart on the card. I had a parent volunteer make different decks of treasure hunts for me, and she was pretty artistic, even just a little sticker. Don't forget to include the treasures. They love hunting for those. So make sure you check this game out. We don't have time to play it right now or watch it, but you'll see that in the follow-up resources. Numeral rolls and numeral tracks are two materials that are very simple, yet very engaging. On the right are the numeral tracks, and there are 5 flaps, and you have a sentence strip underneath those flaps with the sequence you're working on. Students love opening them up and seeing what's there. You can do so many things with this tool. And once you've modeled it a few times, students love to play with each other. So at first you might have it all open and you're saying the numbers or the numerals and the child is repeating after you. Then you can go backwards as well. Then you maybe close it and you show 1 and they say, so in this case, if I opened that first one, it would be 11 and it's what's next. What does it look like? What do you see in the 11? There's all these prompts you can do to help, and you work on it going forwards and backwards. You can think about number after, number before. I could close the 14 and just have the 12 open and put my finger on what we know would be 15 and say, what do you think comes here? And they start doing that count. So there's so much you can do with them. And I used to make them with my teachers. We would get leftover like the matting they use at like Michael's for behind pictures, and we would just cut it and use the tape on top and make them. So you want 5 and you put 2 together to make 10. And you can also, if you have money in your budget, purchase them we'll have that link in the PDF as well. On the left are the numeral rolls, and those are also a great tool. One side has the numerals 1 through 120. The other side has 10, 20, 30. So there's a natural differentiation in there. Once they're good on one side, you could show, all right, here's 30, put a little counter on 33. What number do you think that is? And they can think about it and self-check by flipping over. We also have a homemade way to make these that we'll send you that as well. You can cut these, so a kid is maybe just working on 10 through 19 and really seeing that pattern. Maybe they need to work on 20 through 29 and get used to that. So there's lots of ways to use these. All right, we're going to move on. I mentioned the frames, and those are about quantity, and all of these images are about quantity. So many of us grew up playing these 2 games, Go Fish and Memory, with a deck of cards. So instead of playing them like we did, have students match the numerals to the quantity and create various decks with different images like you see here. And these 2 games you can then take in so many directions beyond just like working on your numerals and matching it to quantity. You can play Go Fish, Make 10, where I've got a 3, I'm asking for a 7. There's so many ways you can use just these 2 games if you can create those decks of cards. And look at my time, I have 11 minutes left. I still have 2 more topics. So we're gonna keep going. So early structuring. People think about, what is it? Well, first, let me tell you what it supports. It supports conservation of number, imaging of number, tracking account, and subitizing. And all of these are really important to help students develop in the early years. Some of the components of early structuring are finger patterns, spatial patterns, and temporal sequences and temporal patterns. Now, I might sound like a broken record, but if you're interested, we can do a whole half hour on these. Let me know in the feedback. Today, we're going to check out Beckham and what he knows about finger patterns. Then we'll give you some more information about finger patterns. Watch his smile when I ask him to get started here also. Kids love doing the finger patterns. Get these fingers going for me. You ready?
Yeah.
Can you show me 2 fingers? Show the camera. What does 2 look like? All right, how about 4?
Looks like.
Can you figure it out? Hold them up.
Like this.
Ooh, is it?
Yeah.
All right, what about 5? Can you show 5? Oh, that was fast. How about 1? How about 3? Can you show me 6?
It says,
Can you figure it out?
yeah,
Okay, show me.
looks like this.
Okay, hold them up. Okay, count them and see.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
All right, what does Beckham have in place? Think about that. One thing I would say, he's willing to double check and think about numbers over 5. He was pretty solid within 5, and it's really solid with the 4, the way he popped that up. He is 4 years old, so you know that you want to take advantage of whatever age they are to get them really good with that number. And let's talk a little bit more about finger patterns. So why finger patterns? Well, it's a way for students to begin modeling numbers when they don't have the objects to count. And at some point, we're moving them, towards symbolic representation. And we're doing that in kindergarten. They have to see things like 3 plus 4. And we want to have the materials out as much as possible, but we also want them to have strategies for when those materials aren't there. So it's a way for them to begin modeling the numbers. It's also a strategy that they can track their count with as they get older. If they know this is 4 and they're adding 4 to the number, they don't have to then think about, did I do 4? They know they're done when they've made that pattern. So on here it says 1 through 5 on both hands. And so the question is why? So I'm going to ask you to hold up 8 right now for yourself. Make an 8 with your fingers. And think about if you made it as a 5 and 3. Is your 5 on your dominant hand or your non-dominant hand? For me, my 5 was on my dominant hand. And so that means my non-dominant hand needs to know that 3 pattern. Some kids pop up the 3 on their dominant hand and the 5 on their non-dominant. You just don't know. So that's one reason to do 1 to 5 on both hands. Also, another reason is when you're over 6, or when you're 6 or over, you need that other hand. And if they're trying to make the number, then you're not sure, do they really know that that's 6, or they're working on it. We also want to be able to show the numbers between 6 and 9 in 2 ways. So, and fix this slide next time, because 10 you can really only show that way. So, but 6 we can show as the 5 and 1. We also want to be able to show it in the doubles pattern of 3 and 3. So again, you got to be able to make that 3. To me, 3 is the hardest number to make. So you got to be able to work those muscles on both hands. Lastly, we want to, the other thing that these finger patterns help with, besides tracking the count, modeling numbers, is partitioning numbers in early number facts. So we can, if they're popping up 3 and 3 for 6, we can link that then to the symbolic. Oh, we can show that as 6 equals 3 plus 3, or 3 plus 3 equals 6. And so in some of the early number facts that finger patterns can support are those 5 plus facts, as well as the doubles. It's also really engaging and fun, and we want to send the message to kids that these fingers are good tools to use, and we want parents to also embrace that. So this is something you want to communicate out to parents. Here are some nice, easy things you can do with your kids around mathematics, and we want them to get the message that fingers are good. All right, I have 6 minutes, and there'll be some more info on the PDF with other things to do with finger patterns. Counting strategies is what we have for our last topic today. And these are typically the 4 stages that are in pre-K to 1. And I'm going to say more about the first 2 of these after we watch Beckham. And as we watch him, it's again a 1-minute clip, nice, short and sweet. You can learn a lot in 1 minute. Please, again, continue to acknowledge what he already has in place before your brain jumps to, oh, we can't do this yet, or we can't do that yet. We want to build on his strengths and give all children the opportunity to show us what they know. Can you count those and tell me how many are there?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14.
Thank you. Can you give me 8?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Can you put 8 right on here for me? Or slide them under here and I'll cover them up. Can you push 8 over here? Can you count it out loud?
Yeah. 1.
There's your 1. Go ahead. Keep going.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
How many are there?
8.
Thank you. This time. All right, so what did he have in place? I've seen this video a lot. His 1 through 12 sequence, and then 14 was still solid. And that's what he had done for his verbal sequencing with us. Sometimes that changes when the quantity gets put down. He knows to touch the counters, that he's supposed to touch them when he counts. With the get me task, he knew to stop at 8. The first time around, he did stop and look up at me. The second time I asked, he was able to push the 8 over. I gave him a little help because he pushed 2 without saying the count out loud. So did a little adjustment there. And I also asked the question at the end, how many are there? And I asked that because some kiddos, and if you've worked with young children, you've seen this, some kiddos will count that quantity again. When you ask, so how many are there? They think you want them to say every word again, or they don't quite have that conservation yet and that understanding that the last number or the last word they said encompasses the whole quantity. So he has a lot in place. You saw 2 different tasks there, and students really have to coordinate a lot when counting. They have to know to touch one object, say one word, only touch the object once, and also understand that that last object they touch, that word encompasses the whole set. And when you think about what they're doing here, when they're touching one object, they're saying one word, but we know 3 means all 3, but they're not touching all 3. They're just touching that third one. So it's very complicated. And both of these tasks are slightly different. And it's important to do that get me task. It helped him with his one-to-one correspondence. He really showed by moving that he had that a little more rather than just trying to touch everything in the quantity. And with the get me task, they also have to hold on to in their brain, what number am I supposed to stop at? And that can be really hard for kiddos. And you also want to ask that last question. So how many are there, to make sure they have that? So he's got a lot going for him, and a lot of things we can build on. So where does he fall within these 4 stages? These stages are based on Dr. Les Steffi's research, where he sat with hundreds and hundreds of 5- and 6-year-olds and discovered they go through these stages. And there are 2 more stages that aren't considered early numeracy. But if we do a session just on this, we'll jump into those. So he's emergent right now. He's got some things in place, but he needs to shore up his verbal sequence within 20. He needs to be able to count that quantity and not touch things more than once. So he showed that with the get me task. So he's, there's some emergent kids who don't know how to do anything he did, right? So there's a big range here. So he's on the further end of the range of emergent. Many kids coming into kindergarten and pre-kindergarten are emergent counters, and we need to help them shore that up. A perceptual counter is basically, if you give them a quantity, if they can see it, they can count it. They've got a way to know they've finished their count. And as long as they can perceive it and see it, they can count it. The figurative is more towards the end of K, and sometimes also in first grade. And we're not going to get into that today because it's 4 o'clock. But it's basically they're able to start counting things they can't see. They've got ways to represent that count. So I know it was fast and furious. Feels fast and furious to me, but we want feedback. Maybe you want to stay for an hour and 30 minutes is too short. We're trying to make it short. We know how busy you all are. So please provide us some feedback via this QR code.